Hi everyone and welcome, I'm Gavin Lon. In this video we'll discuss 10 amazing features in Blazor. There are so many more amazing features in Blazor, so please feel free to include the features that you think are amazing in the comments section. If you have any other comments, also please feel free to share them in the comments section. Your insights are always greatly appreciated. Number 1. Signal R Nuget package. Within your Blazor applications, it is easy to leverage Signal R in order to provide real-time functionality in your Blazor applications. To do this, you can include this Nuget package, microsoft.aspnet.core.signalr.client, within your Blazor application. So what is the significance of providing Signal R functionality in your Blazor applications? Signal R can be leveraged to provide real-time push notifications to all of your client Blazor apps in response to a specific event occurring. The simplest example would be with a chat app, where multiple clients can participate in a chat. When a message is sent from one client, that message automatically is propagated to all the other Blazor clients in real time. Last year, I created a course for FreeCodeCamp for Syncfusion. In this course, I created a real-world application, a sales management application, to provide a real-world context for the Syncfusion front-end components. Syncfusion provides a UI component suite for building powerful web, desktop, and mobile apps. You can check out this course at this URL. All links mentioned in this video are included below in the description of this video. In this course, the focus was on the client-side components, the Syncfusion components, and I did not include Signal R functionality in this Syncfusion course. However, Signal R would be a great addition to a subsequent version or Signal R version of the sales management application. I could add real-time functionality through appropriately leveraging Signal R. With the version of the application demonstrated in this course, when a sales rep adds details for a new sale to the system, the relevant information is inserted into the database. So in this version of the app, the non-Signal R version if you like, the other members of the team will only see the aggregated information, for example, on a relevant chart denoted by a Syncfusion chart component, being affected by the new sale being added to the system when the user refreshes the user's browser. If Signal R were to be included in a subsequent version of the sales management app, functionality could be included so that when a new sale is added to the system, the other members would see relevant changes in the charts that aggregate sales information made in real time, i.e., they would not need to refresh their browsers in order to see the effect of a new sale being added to the system. The relevant charts would update appropriately in real time. A Signal R connection could be used to automatically push the relevant data pertaining to a new sale to all relevant Blazor clients. So the relevant charts would be updated automatically in real time without a browser refresh needing to take place. So you can see how the power of Signal R can be leveraged in your applications to create real-time functionality. Please navigate to this location on the Microsoft Learn platform to learn more about how you are able to leverage Signal R through leveraging this Nuget package in, for example, your Blazor applications. You can see here example code pertaining to leveraging Signal R in a basic chat application. So please read more details here about Signal R and how you are able to leverage Signal R in your ASP.NET applications. Very powerful indeed. Number 2. Server-side pre-rendering of Razor components. First of all, what does it mean to pre-render a Razor component in Blazor? Here is a depiction of basically what happens with a normal HTTP request response regarding Blazor WebAssembly components and Blazor server components. So what is the problem with this model? So this is a model demonstrating what happens when pre-rendering is not used. With client-side WebAssembly components, before the user can interact with the relevant components, all the relevant files and content need to be downloaded to the client. This can be a slow process and result in a poor UX, user experience, potentially resulting in your users taking a dim view of your application. With the client-side and server-side scenario, due to the fact that JavaScript and Signal R or WebAssembly is needed, optimizing your web app for SEO, search engine optimization, is not easy. Often search engines won't execute JavaScript or will have an issue with WebSockets and WebAssembly. Pre-rendering can be a solution to this SEO issue. In this case, where server-side pre-rendering is leveraged, all the relevant HTML content pertaining to the relevant component is rendered as static HTML, and then the static HTML is returned to the client and displayed in the user's browser. This diagram depicts what this HTTP request response looks like. The benefits of pre-rendering a Blazor component are as follows. For client-side WebAssembly Razor components, the initial load is just static HTML, so all the .NET libraries that would usually need to be downloaded don't need to be initially downloaded to display the content. This means much faster initial load times for the relevant web page and a far better user experience, UX. In both client-side WebAssembly components and Blazor server components, better SEO, search engine optimization, is ensured. To learn more about server-side pre-rendering Razor components, please navigate to this Microsoft Learn web page. Number 3, virtualization. To understand what virtualization in Blazor means and how it can be used in your Blazor applications to optimize a user's experience in certain scenarios, let's navigate to this Microsoft Learn web page at this URL and look at an example of the use of virtualization. First of all, you can see here that a list of items containing flight information is displayed within a parent div tag. Note that the parent div tag is limited to a certain height within the relevant web page through the use of appropriate CSS code. So this div tag limits the display within the div tag to 500 pixels, and if the items in the list exceed the height limitation imposed on the containing div tag by the relevant CSS code, a vertical scroll bar is automatically displayed, which is indicative of the fact that there are more list items in the list currently hidden from view. The user can then, of course, use the relevant vertical scrolling facility appropriately in order to see the items currently hidden from view. With virtualization, only the items in the list that can fit within the view of the parent div container are rendered. Even though in the case where there are more items in the list that are hidden from view due to the height restriction imposed by the parent div container's appropriate associated CSS code, only the items that can be displayed in the list are rendered. So this virtualization functionality can enhance the perceived performance of your application. Using Blazor's built-in virtualization support is very simple. In a normal scenario where you are displaying a few items in a list, you'd probably simply implement a basic C# for each loop, traverse the items in the relevant list, and display the items appropriately using HTML markup, like is depicted in this code example here. However, to achieve the virtualization effect, instead of using a for each loop, you implement the same functionality, but using a built-in Blazor virtualize component like this. Please read the details of how to implement virtualization at this URL. Let's read an explanation of what is happening in this example on the Microsoft Learn platform. The virtualize in angle brackets T item component calculates the number of items to render based on the height of the container and the size of the rendered items, recalculates and re-renders the items as the user scrolls, only fetches the slice of records from an external API that correspond to the current visible region, instead of downloading all the data from the collection, receives a generic iCollection in angle brackets T for virtualize in angle brackets T item items. So with the built-in Blazor virtualization functionality, the Blazor framework is doing some heavy lifting on your behalf, and you can leverage virtualization where appropriate to create a better UX, user experience. So for example, if you were just displaying 10 items in a list to the user, the appropriate use of a for each loop for the traversal of all the relevant items in the list would be a sufficient solution. However, what if there were hundreds of thousands of items in the list? If you were to use a for each loop in order to display all of these hundreds of thousands of items to the user on the page, the initial load time would be severely slowed down, and displaying all of these items in the web page would result in a poor user experience. So where there is a sufficiently large number of items to be displayed to the user in a web page, virtualization is a great solution and can vastly improve the UX, user experience. Number 4, lazy loading of WebAssembly components. Lazy loading in Blazor WebAssembly components can be used to defer the downloading of assemblies until the root pertaining to the relevant assembly components are requested by the end user. This helps to improve startup performance of large Blazor WebAssembly applications. Please read more details associated with lazy loading Blazor WebAssembly components at this URL on the Microsoft Learn platform. So using lazy loading is another way that you can improve the UX user experience with your Blazor applications. Using lazy loading in your Blazor application where Blazor assembly components are used can be leveraged appropriately to improve the user's experience. Code examples on how to implement lazy loading for Blazor WebAssembly components can be found at this URL. Number 5, hot reload. Let's navigate to this URL on the Microsoft Learn platform and read about hot reload support for Blazor components. .NET Hot Reload applies code changes, including changes to style sheets, to a running app without restarting the app and without losing AppState. Hot Reload is supported for all ASP.NET Core 6.0 and later projects. So let's navigate to this URL on the Microsoft Learn platform, and you can see here in this visual example, hot reload support working in Visual Studio 2022. So let's read this excerpt available to us at this URL. We accomplish this, meaning through hot reload, by making it possible for you to edit your application's code files and apply the code changes immediately to the running application, also known as hot reload. Once your changes are applied, re-execute your code again by taking an action in the app itself or through some sort of timer, etc., and see the changes immediately. No pausing of the app through breakpoints is required. So that's how you would do it with Visual Studio 2022. In Visual Studio Code, you can run the .NET Watch command to leverage hot reload functionality. For more details on using hot reload in your Blazor applications using VS Code, please navigate to this URL. So hot reload provides an excellent convenience to developers when creating Blazor applications, either using VS Code or Visual Studio 2022. Number 6, AppState or application state in Blazor. In Blazor, you are able to easily maintain the state of the application outside of your UI components. You cannot maintain the state of your Blazor applications within the components of your applications, simply because whenever, for example, you navigate to a page, all the variables within that page or component are recreated and initialized, which means any state that you had stored previously will be lost across page navigations. If you want to preserve state across page navigations or page refreshes, you are able to do this by making sure that this responsibility, the responsibility of storing the state of the app, is provided in one component. You can then, within the routes.razor file that contains all the routes to the Razor components of your app, wrap the relevant routes within the component that is dedicated to maintaining the state of your app. The key to how this works is a concept in Blazor known as cascading parameters. Through a cascading parameter that exists within all of the child components, you can propagate the state of your application stored within the component that is dedicated to preserving state down to the relevant child components of the application. For those of you who are familiar with React, the way of preserving state that I have just described for Blazor apps is very similar to the way context is used for preserving state in React. In React, this is a way to avoid prop drilling for the purpose of propagating state down to child components. Number 7, efficient communication using gRPC-web. The gRPC framework can be leveraged to create high-performing communication between endpoints. RPC stands for Remote Procedure Call. Blazor supports gRPC. In order to leverage gRPC from a Blazor component, you need to use gRPC-web to enable communication between the browser and the gRPC server. For details on how to implement gRPC within a Blazor app, please navigate to this URL. Remember, all links referenced in this video have been included below in the description of this video. Number 8, Razor syntax and CSS isolation. This is certainly the least obscure feature on this list. I felt I had to include Razor syntax because I love being able to easily blend raw HTML with C# logic in order to code my UI components. I find working with, for example, JSX, JavaScript and XML for creating the front-end UI functionality for React components less intuitive and less clean than when working with Razor for the same purpose in Blazor. I find that there is a clearer separation of concerns when working with Razor. There is a clear separation of the markup code from the C# logic. Like in React, in Blazor, you are also able to isolate your CSS code from other components. Creating scoped CSS files is very simple in Blazor. This is a powerful feature where each component can be styled individually as opposed to having a global style sheet that affects all components. You can achieve this CSS isolation through the creation of a style sheet with the same name as the relevant component and then appending .css to the end of the relevant file name. So if you had a Razor component named employee.razor, you could create a CSS style sheet that only affects this component in your app by naming the relevant CSS style sheet employee.razor.css. Number 9, progressive web apps. With progressive web apps, you can easily make your Blazor WebAssembly apps behave like desktop apps. This can be done through Visual Studio simply by checking a checkbox labeled Progressive Web Application during the project creation process. If you are using Visual Studio Code, you can run a CLI command like this to turn your Blazor WebAssembly app into a progressive web app. Let's navigate to this URL on the Microsoft Learn platform and read a bit about progressive web apps. Blazor WebAssembly is a standards-based client-side web app platform. So it can use any browser API, including PWA APIs required for the following capabilities: working offline and loading instantly, independent of network speed. Running in its own app window, not just a browser window. Being launched from the host's operating system start menu, dock, or home screen. Receiving push notifications from a backend server, even while the user isn't using the app. Automatically updating in the background. The word progressive is used to describe these apps because a user might first discover the use of the app within their web browser like any other SPA. Later, the user progresses to installing it in their OS and enabling push notifications. So this is a very powerful and simple feature that you can leverage for your Blazor WebAssembly applications. Number 10, Auto Interactive Render Mode. This is a feature that has recently been shipped with the official release of .NET 8. With the release of .NET 8, you are able to leverage a new project template named Blazor Web App. Before .NET 8, you had a choice for the creation of Blazor applications between the Blazor Server project template and the Blazor WebAssembly project template. The name of these two templates very much suggests how the components in these two disparate types of Blazor apps are rendered. With Blazor Server components, a persistent Signal R connection is maintained between client and server, and the C# code runs on the server. With Blazor WebAssembly, all the necessary .NET runtime libraries and dependency DLLs need to be downloaded to the user's browser, and your C# code runs inside the browser. The reasons that the C# code can run inside the browser is due to a technology named WebAssembly. Through the use of the Blazor Web App project template, you can mix your render modes. So you can have Blazor Server components mixed in with Blazor WebAssembly components within the same project and even within the same Razor page. Each of these types of components, i.e. Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly, have their pros and cons. A pro of Blazor Server components is that their initial load times are much faster when compared to Blazor WebAssembly components. This is because the .NET runtime and all dependency DLLs do not need to be downloaded to the browser, and the C# code logic runs on the server. With Blazor Server components, communication between client and server is done through a persistent Signal R connection. As discussed with Blazor WebAssembly components is the overhead of all the .NET runtime libraries and dependency DLLs needing to be downloaded to the browser before the components can function within the browser. So the initial load times are much slower with Blazor WebAssembly components when compared to the initial load times of Blazor Server components. Server-side rendering was also introduced with .NET 8, which allows for components to be rendered on the server, which results in much faster initial load times. Through the use of the Blazor Web App project template, you can easily leverage a new bonus feature called interactive auto rendering. Let's read more about this on the Microsoft Learn platform at this URL. Render modes. Every component in a Blazor web app adopts a render mode to determine the hosting model that is used, where it's rendered, and whether or not it's interactive. The following table shows the available render modes for rendering Razor components in a Blazor web app. To apply a render mode to a component, use the @renderMode directive on the component instance or on the component definition. You can see here the table outlining the various render modes. Please read this entire article for more details. At the bottom of the table, you have the interactive auto rendering mode. Interactive SSR using Blazor Server initially, and then CSR on subsequent visits after the Blazor bundle is downloaded. So through the interactive auto render mode, you can leverage server-side rendering, which will make the initial loading of the relevant component much quicker. The relevant runtime DLLs and dependency DLLs are then downloaded in the background, which means client-side rendering can subsequently be employed to handle the user interactive functionality, which will result in fast responsive updates to the web page as a result of the user interacting with the web page. This means through auto interactive render mode, you are leveraging the best of both worlds, SSR, server-side rendering, and CSR, client-side rendering, so that initial load times of components are super fast and subsequent interactions with the component by the user result in appropriate changes being made in the browser super fast. So through auto interactive render mode, your Blazor app can benefit from both fast initial load times and better SEO, as well as fast, smooth responsiveness when the user subsequently interacts with the relevant web page. These 10 outstanding features make Blazor simply awesome. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments section what features you love about Blazor, and anything else you'd like to say in the comments section will of course be welcome. I really do appreciate your insights. If you like this video, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing. Please also ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. Please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you'd like to thank me by buying me a coffee, you can do this through my Buy Me a Coffee webpage at this URL. It will of course be greatly appreciated. I love reading your comments, so please feel free to engage with me in the comments section. I've recently joined X, formerly Twitter, so it would be great if you followed me on X. My username is @GavinLonDigital. I hope to see you soon. Thank you and take care.